Hey, what's up, everybody? We got a change of scenery this time. I'm outside. Daryl, you're wherever you are. And we got a really good show for you tonight. We got a release date finally for The Mandalorian Season 2. We're going to discuss whether or not Ahsoka might have her white lightsabers. We're going to put Anakin and Obi Wan against each other and who would be the better teacher. And of course, we have finally got the big explanation that we've been promising. That is, what exactly is the Dyad and the Force? We're going to find out right now.
You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. Now, again, we had to do a little bit of a change of scenery because the place where we usually do our show just wasn't available to us today, so we had to do what we can. So, we apologize in advance for any technical issues that might arise during this show. So how have you been doing, man? It's been a minute. It's been like a week.
Man. I know, been busy. We're starting to get our marching orders for school, opening back up and whatnot. So just been kind of ensconced with that. They've already thrown like their first two projects on me already that I have to get done by next week. So that's fun.
Oh, that's always a blast. Yeah.
Exactly. So I've been kind of trying to contact teachers and doing all that stuff. So I'm glad to, take a moment and talk about some Star Wars.
All right. Well, you ready to get into it?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's do it. Main topic, everybody. All right, so this week we actually are going to try to attempt to explain here the whole dyad in the Force part. Now, it's a little bit of a weird concept, and as many of you guys know, this is something that they hinted toward in the Clone Wars a little bit, but it was mainly brought up in the Rise of Skywalker, and everybody was just like, Palpatine's just all casually mentioning, like, hey, you guys like this dyad in the Force, and we're all in the theater going, what?
The heck is that?
Yeah, what are you talking about? So what have you unearthed about this whole thing, Daryl?
So, this has been one of the big things for me. I always wanted to know, like, more about this whole Force Dyad because if you recall, like, when we went to go see the movie, one of my big questions, like, okay, how the heck are they fighting each other? Like, she's on the ship, he's on the ground, but they're, like, in front of each other. Like, how is all this working? It's weird. So I started to, explore this whole Force Dyad thing, and I unearthed a lot of stuff. And honestly, like, the sequel trilogy makes more sense to me now. Because if you remember, like, J.J. Abrams was talking about initially, like, how he wanted to basically, like, tie in the original, well, all the episodes into one big film. And I was like, well, we all were wondering, like, how is he going to do that? And ironically, he did it with the dyad and the Force. So what is the dyad exactly? So if you recall, back in episode 1, when they first ran into Anakin Skywalker, he was considered the virgins in the Force or what have you. So, of course, he was a child born of the Force. And if you go even further back to some of the Sith prophecies, if you will, they talked about this whole dyad thing. And Plagueis and Palpatine, Plagueis thought Palpatine was going to be his dyad because of how powerful Palpatine was. But then that didn't happen. Then when Palpatine ran across Anakin, he realized how powerful he was, and the fact that he kind of found out that he was conceived of the Force. That's why he was so hot, of course, of getting him, because he realized if I can get this kid on my side, then I could be like super, super, super powerful. The two of us. And we could truly rule this galaxy as one. And so that was kind of like one of his main reasons of actually going after Anakin. It wasn't just, yes, because he was powerful, but there was a kind of a deeper meaning of that because he knew of this whole dyad situation.
Okay.
So, of course, now, and even when we first fast forward to episode 3, and Palpatine makes the statement to Anakin, he's like, okay, there's powers, the dark side has powers that are some considered to be unnatural and things of that nature, and he can even keep the ones you love from dying. That's what he was referring to.
Yeah, you know what? It's very interesting that he actually used that line in the Rise of Skywalker.
Exactly.
See, I think most fans probably thought this, but I figured that was just some cheap callback that JJ decided to do, almost like a fan service thing.
Yeah, but that actually had meaning, because now when you look at that, it's like, okay, well, and Palpatine said, well, I don't know that power, but together we can figure out the secret. Once again, he still believes that he and Anakin have this ability to be the dyad in the Force that that he so wanted, because Palpatine always craved that power.
Right. So he was basically trying to make it to where he and Anakin were actually the dyad in the Force.
Exactly, just like Plagueis tried to make him
and Palpatine the dyad, right? So it makes me wonder then, and maybe you'll get to this, but it makes me wonder then if there is some, in other words, pardon the pun, but can you force it?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I don't know. I think they were trying to figure out, like, is there some sort of Sith thing that we can do, or is there a trick? No different than how Yoda learned how to become a Force ghost through Qui-Gon. He didn't know that before, so someone had to teach it to him. So I think
that still gets me, man. That still. I mean, I don't know if I think they're starting to delve into that with some of the newer canon material, but it's like, dude, I mean, first of all, how could you practice this? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's like, okay, if you die, and you only basically get one shot at it, so either you're naturally gifted or, I think that more, and this sounds kind of crazy, but I think that more stuff should be covered on what happens exactly when a Jedi dies.
Well, yeah, and I think once you kind of unearth the secret, once you kind of know, because it seems like now it's like if you just die, you just automatically become a Force ghost. It's not even like you're really thinking about it.
Well, that's it. I mean, but the thing is, though, and this is what I'm talking about. Like, okay, Obi Wan was taught by Qui-Gon. We know that. We know that that's definitely been canonized. In fact, there was rumors that they actually shot some scenes for Revenge of the Sith, that they were going to actually cover that. They were going to show, Qui-Gon doing his thing, and then they were going to bring it up in the Clone Wars. But the thing that I find interesting is, okay, it makes sense for Obi-Wan to know this because it's been established that Qui-Gon taught him how to do it, just like he taught Yoda how to do it. But, and I guess that, obviously Yoda could have passed that on to Luke. Luke could have then passed it on to Leia. But I'm trying to think if there's any examples, like Anakin. I mean, how did he know how to do it?
Well, I don't think he did. I mean, when Vader died and he kind of turned back to Anakin Skywalker, I think because he was conceived of the Force, he just kind of went back to his original state.
Well, okay, I could buy that. I can actually buy that. That does make some sort of sense. I do think, in a way, it's a little bit reaching.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's what we have to do,
Because if you really think about it, like, everybody that we've seen become Force ghosts outside of Qui-Gon gave themselves up to it.
Right.
So when you look at Yoda, he, kind of just allowed it to happen. Obi-Wan, you can see when he raised his saber in episode 4, he just kind of meditates and allows it to happen.
Yeah, but the thing
and Luke did the same way in Rise of Skywalker. He was just kind of sitting up at the edge of the rock and just kind of just...
Right, they let it overtake them. But my point, though, is that it's implied that it's a technique that has to be learned.
Right.
So that's where I'm having a little bit of the issue. I'm not entirely sure, how that works.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, like, it's still one of those mysteries that we never even really got completely answered in the Clone Wars. We got more information on it in the Clone Wars, but we still didn't get all the answers in it. But with the dyad thing, I think what's cool about that is that, how when we fast forward now to, now we're into the original trilogy. And of course, Vader is trying to take Luke as an apprentice because he wants to destroy Palpatine. But I don't think Vader at the time even really understood the whole dyad situation. I don't think that was Vader's purpose, but I think that was Palpatine's purpose as to why he wanted Luke, because he felt like, okay, well, Vader isn't it,
Yeah.
and maybe because he's been too mangled up because of the fight with Obi Wan, but now he has a grandson in the Force. So now it's like, okay, well, Luke could be the one, and that's why he really wanted Luke to kind of join him and be his new apprentice, because he knew he would be more powerful.
Sure. I mean, that makes sense. You know,
So,
hey, Ronaldo's chatting in, and I see it this time.
uh-oh.
Yeah.
Hey, Ronaldo.
So
Hey,
hang on,
man, going well.
He's saying, yeah, how guys, how you doing? Yeah, we're doing pretty good this week, actually. You know, it's been a little bit of a week, but hey, it's been good. We're glad to see you, of course, joining us again. And obviously, this is probably going to be a good chat now that he's here. So, yeah, I mean, I get a lot of that. And basically, yes, Luke, I think, definitely was the next, apprentice that
Logical
Palpatine,
step, yeah.
sure, that he was eyeing, because obviously being the grandson of the Force, he still has all his parts, so to speak.
Well, at least most of them.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to see, though, on whether or not Luke actually would have been. This is something that I don't know if we've ever talked about directly. I know we've skated around this before, but I don't know if we've ever actually addressed this directly. And that is, do you think that Luke would have actually eclipsed Vader in power? Now, I know in the expanded universe, he eclipsed everybody in power. But what's interesting to me, not so much the Luke and Vader comparison, but really more the Luke and Anakin comparison. Like, let's say that Anakin had never... Well, I mean, he turned into Vader as far as he was a Sith Lord, but I'm talking about he never got, chopped up and put in the suit and all that stuff. Like, what if he was Darth Vader kind of the way he was in Episode 3, where he was basically, he was Anakin. And then the other question that goes along with that, and this all relates to the dyad of the Force in a way, is what if Anakin never actually turned evil? What if he never turned to the dark side? What if he remained an actual Jedi? How does he compare with Luke then?
Well, I mean, I think that ultimately, I think it just depends on what the will of the Force is at that time. We've often talked about that. So I think if there's a situation, I mean, honestly, Vader would be stronger simply because he's like a direct descendant of the Force. He was created by the Force. So his natural ability, his power. I mean, we even talked about the fact that Vader could actually generate red lightning.
Yeah, that was really cool, and that came from like a comic book source or something that I had stumbled across. And what was interesting about that is red lightning, which I don't think we've ever seen that in any of the animated series or the movies or anything. But it's actually more powerful than even the blue lightning. In fact, it's supposed to be like incredibly lethal. And Vader was actually able to conjure this, and in fact did, in a canonized source, which I believe was a comic.
Yeah,
Could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was a comic. And I remember the drawing of it. I remember the artistic rendition of it. But the thing that was interesting to me is it had long been theorized that Vader couldn't use lightning because of his whole suit, that it would short out his suit. But obviously that wasn't the case.
Well, yeah, and he's been known to tinker with his suit anyway, so he
Sure.
probably built in some weird like surge protectors or something crazy. And,
Right, exactly. That it would, like he was
like that.
grounded somehow or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
But-
and that's conceivable though. That's a good point.
He's, as much as good as he was with the Force and being a great pilot, he's also a great mechanic.
Well, yeah, and it absolutely, and it stands to reason that he would do things to improve, because remember, Palpatine put him in that suit in order to punish him, and also he kept it to where it was painful and it would activate his powers because of the anger and the hatred and all that. It would just, the pain would enrage him, and it would amplify his powers. It's interesting. I was just reading last night the latest issue of the most recent Darth Vader series. It came out 3 days ago or something. Amazing. there was like some giant Naboo, because he's on Naboo, and basically Dorme and all those were trying to help him find, Padme's killer. And they suspected that Vader killed both Anakin and Padme, which is hilarious. Because from a certain point of view, they're correct.
That is true, yes.
Anakin, Vader did kill Anakin, and Vader did kill Padme, in a sense. But then they decided, all the other handmaidens, Typho, this kind of ties into that, Queen's Peril book that you've been forever reading.
I know, right?
So, hang on, I got to take some time to acknowledge my mom's like, hi, you guys, love the outdoor background. Yeah, well, we'll see how that goes, because, number one, we're going to really test the low light capabilities of this camera. Then we're going to test the battery power of this light, because I had to dig up, I don't have my normal light kit with me. I mean, anything that could have gone wrong for today's show has gone wrong, but we're like, you know what? We're going to bring it to you guys.
Show must go on.
Sure, and I was afraid because of the lighting situation in the room that I would normally do these things. It's like, I don't think this is going to work. So what I decided to do was use the natural light outside. But there's heat, there's humidity, there's bugs, there's all kinds of crazy things out here that may play havoc with this show, but we'll see. But anyway, so that book that you're forever reading, don't think I let that go.
I know.
So the book that you're forever reading, was it Queen's Peril?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, because I always got that and Queen's Shadow confused, right? But it's Queen's Peril. Okay. So Queen's Peril, I think, probably ties into this latest story arc in the comics. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it does. So Vader ends up, of course, he didn't really want to kill them. And I don't think he did. I think he kind of like lifted them all in the air, choked them, and threw them or something like that. But then they decided to unleash Naboo's apex predator, which is like this just crazy Godzilla-like insane creature that nobody's ever killed, which of course Vader does. So I bring this up just to say that Vader is just really ultra powerful. This isn't like some fanboy dream or something like that. I mean, even in all the canon sources, they keep bringing this up. Vader is just super, super powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just don't think that it's one of those things that you can really discount is his power.
No. Oh, yeah, no, definitely. But I mean, like I said, it stands to reason. I mean, he's the son of the Force. I mean, why wouldn't he be?
Right, but then when you bring this into the whole dyad of the Force, it also makes me wonder, did he and Palpatine... First of all, you got to wonder, does the dyad work for the dark side?
Well, and that's the question. I mean, there's a lot of different things as far as like, how does the dyad actually work? Do you have to have light and dark? Can you have too dark and too light? Like, we don't know. We just know that
it's like combos at a Chinese restaurant.
Exactly. So I think that's what made the whole story so unique and cool, because like, but now that we fast forward to the sequel trilogy, now a lot of things that took place make sense. So when like Kylo said, there's this girl, and he's like, what girl?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, because he already could feel her. Because when there was the awakening in the Force, that was it. And that's why Snoke was just like, is an awakening. Have you felt it? And so and then that's why, remember, we were all like, well, how is this girl so powerful that she could actually, resist Kylo's mind thing, and she could actually use mind control over like the stormtroopers? Well, that's why, because she absorbed pretty much a lot of his knowledge of the Force within herself, because they were becoming one. The longer it goes on, that they're around each other, the stronger they get.
Yeah, but I mean,
go ahead.
Well, I just think that here's the problem that I have. I really wish that all this had been, I hate to go on this whole diatribe again, but I really wish that this had actually been the plan. I mean, I will give it to them that if this is part of JJ retconning and trying to tie everything together, which I actually think you might be correct about that, because if you remember, and I'm talking, I know you do, but I'm talking to everybody else out there. If everybody remembers, one of the things that JJ did say was that he was going to try to tie the entire saga together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what ended up happening was with the Rise of Skywalker, he had the insurmountable task of trying to make this entire, not just the trilogy make sense, but have the trilogy make sense in light of the entire saga.
Mm-hmm.
And so consequently, I think he started to try to come up with these concepts. And I honestly think that they opened the door to this when they brought up the world between worlds back in the Clone Wars. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think, but I mean, if you were going to do it, I mean, to me, I think it's a brilliant way to do it, honestly. However, the only part, once again, where they fell short is that they didn't explain about it. They didn't explain it enough. It's this whole like
Well,
dyad in the force. It's like
well,
we
that
get
was
the
my
two, we
point.
get the fact that the two are one, but it's like, okay, well, where did this even come from? Like we've never heard anything. So it's like, okay, I could see if Palpatine had like some long speech about, you know,
Hey, maybe he did in
if it
Fortnite.
was prophesied, you know, thousands of years ago that there'll be a dyad in the force, and I find that, you know, I tried this with Vader and Vader failed, but you have it with her, you know, and if it was like kind of explained, almost kind of like the whole James Bond, you know, megalomaniac villain, like, okay, well, here's my plan, and this is what it is. Like if we had something like that,
It's true. It only would have taken like one line of dialogue.
yeah, I mean, you could have just get it in a really good like Palpatine scene. Nice rhyme there, but
You're a natural rapper, my friend.
hey, stuff at Christmas time, I suck at it. But anyway,
Mm.
um, so the whole thing is that like I think that this whole dyad in the Force is really a cool concept because they talked about that. It only comes around like almost like once in a millennia or something like that. And so the fact that like it happened between Ray and Kylo, that's why Kylo didn't want to kill Ray, was because with the dyad, you do understand the other person because you can see into the other person's life. So that's how he knew so much about Ray, as far as like your parents and everything like that. She knew that he wanted to be Vader. They began to have an understanding of each other, and they began to have that kind of somewhat of a sense of compassion towards each other because they understood where the other person was coming from, yet they didn't agree,
Yeah,
which
but
made the whole scene when Ray actually healed Kylo, that was like the last bit of like, okay, she's pushing her force energy into him. That was the kind of, and a couple with, you know, his mother, you know, calling out to him, that pushed Kylo back to the light side.
yeah,
And
no,
so,
I
yeah,
agree. I totally agree. But I mean, and that's the thing. I think that if they had to sort of retcon everything and try to make it to where, hey, we have to make all this make sense, because again, one of my, and many fans actually, one of our complaints about the sequel trilogy is the fact that they started out pretty good with The Force Awakens. Then they basically just let each of the subsequent directors do whatever they pretty much wanted with the story. It was like a choose your own adventure thing.
hmm
Whereas what they should have done was got in a room, plan the entire story arc, and then each person takes a section of it. And then within their movie, they could do whatever they wanted, but it still had to be ultimately the narrative. They didn't do
now,
that.
now let me ask this question: do you think the dyad should have been explained in Rise of Skywalker or the Last Jedi?
I think it probably should have been explained in The Last Jedi. I was even tempted. Actually, it probably should have been explained in, like, Attack of the Clones or something. I mean, it's like, but I mean, I get it. They're always adding to the lore, and I understand that. And again, you don't necessarily want to bring this up in books or comics or anything because not everybody reads those. But
And
I would say The
mhm,
Last Jedi, definitely.
yeah, I think the Last Jedi would have been the perfect time to explain it, especially, you know, that whole scene when they're like in that little hut and they're about to touch fingers, and like that's what I'm saying. Like all that, like now that makes more, all those scenes now make sense when they can feel like the wetness of, you know, when Kylo can see like, okay, I can see the island, but I can't see what's, you know what I'm saying, all that stuff. Now, what makes it interesting is that Palpatine created Snoke. But Snoke was the one who said, I melded your minds together.
Yeah, well,
So you kind of have to wonder, did Palpatine? Because Palpatine act like he didn't know about this whole dyad in the Force.
yeah, I
And Rise
know. And this
of
is
Skywalker, he was surprised by it.
well, but here's the thing. And let me just bring up a couple of points here for this. Number 1, I think that if they had introduced this conceptually in The Last Jedi and then have it revealed that Rey and Kylo have this, that would have been the payoff. See, but they could have introduced the concept. I mean, obviously you're getting hint towards it, but you may not necessarily know if it's a dyad or not. I think this is something, honestly, that Luke Skywalker should have brought up during his training, that he stumbled across it. Or, maybe Yoda could have, they could have been like, well, there is that dyad thing or whatever. I mean, something to the effect of where you explain the concept of it. And then what happens is you then find out that Rey and Kylo actually are a dyad in the Force. Now, to go to your point, what you just brought up, I had been thinking about the whole idea of Snoke, and even though Palpatine created him, that doesn't necessarily mean that he knew every single thing he was doing. He made him pretty powerful. It would be no different than if you trained somebody in something and, you're their boss or whatever, and then you basically say, okay, you're representing me, you go do this. Okay, you know the overarching thing, but you might not know every detail that representative of yours is doing. They're achieving the goal that you want to achieve, but you don't know everything that they're doing.
True.
So my feeling in this is quite simply, I think that Snoke did this of his own accord, basically. I think he had done this to try to get her to join them, and it started to backfire on him.
Ronaldo says,
oh, wow, yeah. A little...
it seems the concept of dyad doesn't make both Force users stronger. In the movie, when Rey and Kylo confront Palpatine, I thought the connection was going to make them more powerful. It doesn't necessarily make them more powerful. It just makes them connected. So
right.
But it's a stronger connection where they can feel each other like light years away from each other. Like, how like they can do it in the Force already. Like Luke could be on a ship somewhere and Vader can sense him.
Well, actually, they brought that up.
Proximity.
That's true. That was brought up somewhere. Is the fact that, yes, there was definitely a dyad, I think, between Luke and Vader. Without question.
Well, there was, just because of the father-son connection.
Well, and the fact that they were also both, Anakin was born of the Force, Luke being the grandson. I mean,
right.
The fact that they were actually, in essence, related to the Force, I think that made a big difference.
True. That's a very good point. But the dyad thing is like I said, and that explains why. Now, the fact that Palpatine was able to drain that Force from them. Now, at that time, they both were on the light side.
Right.
And that still didn't make a Palpatine any nicer.
No, it really didn't.
Like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? So I think what it does, it does restore. It does. And I think that he just took the healing properties, if you will, of the light side and it helped, sustain him.
Yeah, I mean,
because the Force is the Force, I mean, whether it's light or dark. I mean,
you're about to go into the Mr. Ed theme song on that one.
I know, right?
But I mean, again, and I'll say it a million times, is the fact that it's really interesting the way that the Force interacts on the light side versus the dark side. Because, and we brought this up last week, where there's certain elements that make up light and dark, but it's still the Force, though.
Yeah.
And so, again, though, it does make me wonder, what would a dark dyad of the Force, first of all, can you have one that's dark? And secondly, if you can, how does that differ from a light side dyad? Because remember, a dyad just means two. It just means two connected, in this case, individuals.
And maybe I think that's actually part of the source of why the Sith do the whole rule of two.
Well, that and the fact that they were killing each other.
Well, yeah, there's that aspect too. But I think,
I mean, there is that little detail. that you can't, you gotta
You can't really
remember.
ignore that.
Yeah, you
Exactly.
can't ignore that. But you could be right. They could be trying to force basically a dyad.
Hmm.
I mean, the problem with this concept is it's so vast that they really should have covered it over a series of films, at least two.
Hmm.
But the fact that they just dropped this in,
Right.
this is the problem. This is why people have a tendency to be very critical, I
Critical.
think, of a lot of the Star Wars stuff because
Sure.
again, when Lucas was doing this, it was one guy and he would actually have a plan, and he would
But the story came from him. You made that point, and that's such a valid point. That it's come all of this information, the story, the characters, it all comes from Lucas. So
yeah,
he's the gatekeeper of all of this stuff. But when you have other people trying to add to his design, it doesn't work as well. It's almost like Steve Jobs. Like, all right, creative Apple is like the further you get away from him, start having problems.
exactly. And that's one of the issues that I've had for a long time is the fact that because it was one guy, like you said, you basically had no issues or whatever with anything. I mean, well, again, a lot of people criticize things that Lucas did, but the point is when he introduced a concept, he basically planted the seed and then that seed grew, and it grew as the story progressed. And usually it was by the end of his trilogies, right? Yeah, the Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, then Revenge of the Sith. Usually things that were planted in Phantom Menace were resolved by Revenge of the Sith.
Hmm.
Things that were planted in A New Hope were resolved by Return of the Jedi.
Hmm.
These are the kinds of things that you had. But the problem is, in this trilogy, because it's done, sometimes you would have a seed planted and it wouldn't even be resolved by the end of the film, and then it's completely ignored by the next one.
Yeah.
And this is the big problem that we have, is the fact that it's like, you get these things dropped on you, and then they're either never resolved or they're resolved too quickly. And that was the
And
problem with the whole dyad. See, it would have made a lot more sense to me in The Rise of Skywalker if it took Kylo and Rey together as a dyad in the Force to beat him. I think I could have accepted that a lot better. I think that it would have, to have her, and I mean, I get it, the Jedi were encouraging her. Again, if they wanted to go that route, I think that they should have just manifested in physical form and all taken him on. Because I think that's kind of it's a cheap tactic. I mean, Palpatine's the most powerful Sith Lord probably ever.
hmm.
There's very few that could have beat him, if anybody.
Right.
So, and again, it's kind of like you have all these people.
Technically, like Kylo didn't really beat him. It was all Rey, really.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It was all Rey, and that's what I have a problem with. The one that's brand new I mean, granted, all right, she's related to him, fine. It's kind of like Luke beating Vader, I guess.
Yeah.
But still kind of cheesy. She had, like, very little training, and she's going to go up against Palpatine. Yoda couldn't really beat him. I mean, kind of, but not really.
Yeah.
Obi Wan, all these powerful people. Mace couldn't technically beat him. You're going to tell me that this girl who barely has any training is going to beat him? I'm not
Well,
buying it.
yeah. I totally get it. And I think that
See, it would have made more sense if it took Rey and Kylo, and because they're a dyad, that's what. And then that would go into Ronaldo's point as far as that dyad, that connection, making them a little bit stronger. Maybe not individually, but it's almost like
a
together.
collective effort.
Yeah, yeah, the collective effort, they're a little bit more powerful. See,
The
that
only
would have
way,
made sense.
and I think honestly, like I don't even think Rey even really beat. It's not like Rey beat Palpatine. It's more so Palpatine beat himself.
Yeah, I
Because
could
once
see that.
again, it's like all Rey did was just learn how to deflect the lightning back at Palpatine, and Palpatine once again, in his arrogance, felt like, okay, you're a kid. I'm this great Grandmaster Sith Lord. Surely, like my Force lightning is going to be able to penetrate through you. And so he keeps pouring it on, and it's like no matter how much he's the pain he's taking, it's making him more angry, and it's intensifying his own lightning.
That's about the only explanation I would buy.
I mean, because that's what I mean. That's the only thing you can say.
Well,
And that's
because I mean, because that's another thing that really didn't make sense to me is why would he keep pouring it on? You know, it's obviously, but because again, in the Mace battle, when he was battling Mace Windu, it made perfect sense. It was like he knew it would disfigure him, and that would play into his narrative. You know, it wasn't something I don't think he planned, but it was one of those. Hey, I mean, since it's happening, let's take advantage of it. You know.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think he was just once again it was his arrogance. You know, and that's always
no. That
been
was
the
a great
downfall.
explanation.
That was the downfall of both sides, both the Jedi and Sith. It was arrogance.
Yeah, well, that's really the biggest problem with Sith Lords in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think that what I think that we have yet to truly explore, though, other than the family connection, is what else can create a dyad in the Force. That's something, because again, this concept's pretty new.
Well, I think it's just once again it's one of those will of the Force type moments, because you really think about it, it's like, okay, you have powerful Palpatine and you had a powerful Skywalker come together and make a dyad. And you could look at it from the standpoint of, like, once again, like Snoke said, powerful, when light rises, when darkness rises, light rises to meet it. Even when Luke was explaining it, when he was trying to teach her about the Force, and she was like, okay, I see, trees, I see the ocean and all this stuff. And he's like, yep.
It's like, what a wonderful world.
And then, like, she started saying, like, okay, well, then I see, like, death and decay. And he's like, yep, powerful light, powerful dark. So you have to have that. And that's, once again, we always kept talking about balance in the Force. And I think those two balanced each other out.
Yeah.
They almost kind of remind you of, like you said, the Clone Wars episode where you had the sister and brother. It was just kind of like they both balanced each other out. And the father kind of sat in the middle trying to keep them in harmony with each other.
Yeah, and I mean, that makes sense. And I mean, you could make the argument that they had a dyad.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And it's like, and that's the thing that I think that they're going to have to try to explain moving forward, is that you had this one example and you explain it a little bit in the Rise of Skywalker, but I think that you have to go beyond that now, not just in comics and books and all that other stuff that the casual Star Wars fan's never going to read, or some fans may not finish. But, sorry, I had to do it. But at the same time, I think that if they, maybe in some of these new animated series they're coming out with, they could possibly explore this in The Mandalorian, although I would hate for them to put too much of that stuff.
Mandalorian is the right. Now, if they want to talk about, like, maybe the Ahsoka thing.
Right. The Ahsoka or Obi Wan.
Or honestly, I think this would be a good thing to talk about in the High Council.
Yes.
Not High Council.
High Republic. Yeah. No, I agree. I totally agree. That would be a phenomenal thing to discuss in the High Republic, because that's something that we don't really have a whole lot. Not only do we have no knowledge, really, because this is like a new timeline or a new era that they're creating in Star Wars, but because the whole dyad thing seems so new, even though some people seem to know, even though Palpatine didn't know, he obviously understood the concept.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, well, it's a dyad. We're all like, a what?
Yeah, I'm like, the heck is that?
It's like we're still trying to get used to Luke's astral projection thing.
We're still trying to get the fact that Palpatine's back.
And then Palpatine is back, and now they're, it's just like, there's just all kinds of stuff going on here. It's just, it's getting a little convoluted, but hopefully they explain it further. I mean, I think we actually did a pretty good job, though, of kind of explaining a lot of it, and at least the overarching concepts of it.
Indeed.
So, I mean, if you guys, you want to leave something in the comments below, or if you got more that you want to chat with us on it, you're free to do it, between now and the end of the show. Like I said, we talk about pretty much anything and everything on this show. All right, I think it's time to do a little battle. What do you say?
Hey, man. Sabers up.
All right, what's next?
Next, we have Duel of the Fates.
Okay. What do we got?
All right, so this week we have who is the better teacher, Anakin or Obi Wan?
Oh, this is gonna be really tough, man. Because there's elements that I like about both of them.
Yeah,
And I think that both of them have very important teachings. It may have actually been more difficult, or I'm sorry, it might have been easier if you'd said Anakin and Qui-Gon,
yeah.
because they're a
Now,
little
I
bit
know.
more similar. But this is a little bit tricky. I'm actually gonna go with early Anakin.
Early Anakin.
Early Anakin,
Okay.
not later Anakin. Early Anakin, and by that I mean when he first got Ahsoka as an apprentice,
Hmm.
maybe up through season 3. That's where I'm gonna maybe cut it off. Possibly 4, but more like 3, because the one thing that I really liked about Anakin's style was he taught people about the Force and the rules and everything else. And even though sometimes he would break them, I think it was good when he had a student, which is exactly why Yoda wanted him to have a student, is because it's kind of like, when Anakin was breaking the rules and Obi-Wan was going crazy, Anakin was like, well, what's the problem? I'm getting the job done, whatever, whatever. But, when
It's kind of
Ahsoka
like
did
when
it,
you. It's kind of like when you stuck me with the video club kids when I when we worked together, man.
oh yeah, well, absolutely, absolutely. And I mean,
Yep.
it's because when you become the teacher and now you have students and they're doing the same thing, well, now suddenly it's like, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be doing this, and there are
Hmm.
rules and you got to follow them. And it's same thing when you're a kid and then you end up becoming a parent. When you
Hmm.
become a parent, it's like, oh, wait a second, no, you can't go and do this. And of course, you were thinking back to when you were a kid and going, well, but then you're like, well, I was a kid, I was stupid, I didn't know any better. So it's when you get that other side. But I think that Anakin has a really good balance, though.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was gonna go with Anakin, just simply because I think the best teachers a lot of times they see your talent.
They get this light on.
They see your talent, but they allow you. They allow you um, to grow and to be yourself and to come into your own. It's like you
Right.
can't. It's not trying to be like an exact replica of someone, but it's like you have to allow. And I even said like coaching. It's like you got some kid who's super talented, but it's like, all right, you have to allow them to take concepts and take these things and then grow into um, who they're going to become, allow their personality to kind of come through and let their creativity, guide them because everyone's unique and you can't make robots out of people,
Right.
they're not clones, so and I think that's kind of Obi-Wan's thing. He was just like, all right, he was more by the book kind of guy, and this works better for him. But you know,
Well, I think there was value in what Obi-Wan was teaching, though.
oh, definitely. It there's, but there's. I think Obi-Wan learned a lot from Anakin too, though.
Yeah. Let me swing back to a couple of Ronaldo's comments. He was like, did you notice that Kylo had no dialogue when he turned back to the light? I did notice that.
He did say "ow."
He did. That's true. He did have that one piece of dialogue. But that was kind of interesting that he didn't. And I still don't know if that was done on purpose or not. It may have been. But, I don't know. Now, on this topic, Ronaldo's like, I think Obi-Wan is a better teacher, but Anakin had better results in a way. Obi-Wan lost his Padawan to the dark side. Anakin lost his apprentice, but at least Ahsoka, stayed in the light.
Well,
What do you think of that?
I think that's a. I mean, it's a valid point. But I think Anakin losing Ahsoka was. he really didn't lose Ahsoka for so much as too much the Jedi Order lost Ahsoka.
Exactly. I was going to bring that up
You
because
know, it's like,
Anakin was actually the last one that.
yeah. It was he was like on his side because he was like, look, I trust my Padawan. I believe in her. She wouldn't do this.
Yeah, and she
You
didn't really
know,
turn against him. And I mean,
no, and even when he tried to get her to stay, she was just like, she still could like, no, master, I have, it wasn't anything. And actually, Anakin kind of resented the council for that.
Yep.
Because it's like you're driving away good people, basically, because, you know, you're not looking at, you're too regimented, you're too dogmatic in facts that you don't have. And that's the thing with Anakin. Anakin sometimes led with his heart.
Yeah, in fact, I would say it's almost the opposite. I would say that Ahsoka leaving the Jedi Order and being disenfranchised with it, and Anakin seeing that, is probably what led him to, or part of his decision for his own That's right? Disenfranchisement or something like that. Yeah, I mean, these are the things that I think that, you have to look at, is that in Obi Wan losing Anakin to the dark side, really, you can't really blame Obi Wan for that because there's just so many other factors involved in that. For one thing,
Yeah.
You have Palpatine constantly in his ear, and then you had the Jedi Council doing things that were kind of shady, and Obi Wan was sort of caught in the middle of all that.
Right. I mean, and Anakin, he was kept trying to, he was actually showing Anakin love and trust and a lot of things. Like, I don't think Obi-Wan lost Anakin at all. Like you said, I think it was just a series of unfortunate circumstances that even unbeknownst to Obi-Wan, like Obi-Wan didn't know everything.
That was it. I think that if Obi-Wan actually knew some of what was going on, then you would see a slightly different thing.
Definitely.
But I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at it, and I think that this is sort of what you're looking at too. I'm looking at it strictly from teaching styles.
Yeah.
I'm looking at, what works, what doesn't, is their style good? Because the other thing is, I think Obi-Wan's style would definitely work for certain types of people. But you could probably say the same thing about Anakin's style too. But I think that overall, certain types of people.
And the thing is, like, Anakin was honest with people.
Yeah.
Like, he was kind of like open out, or he would just say, look, I can't talk about it right now, or whatever the case may be. Obi-Wan would kind of come up with like the whole certain point of view thing.
Exactly.
Like that was just like, okay, like just
little like half truths and
half truths, or just kind of like, all right, well, here you go, here's this, and you can't really do that.
No, exactly.
Because then now people like, and that's the biggest thing with Anakin. That's how he lost Anakin in a way, if you want to say he did, was because Anakin felt like the council was doing things secretly that were like against the code or the what they're supposed to do, as far as like spying on Palpatine and trying to use him to do it because of his relationship and manipulate situations. And that's what Anakin didn't like about the council. And he felt like Palpatine was more upfront and just direct with stuff. And that's kind of how
that's
right. You want to say the council or Obi-Wan lost Anakin.
Yeah, no, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I mean, I think that it was really the shadiness of some of the other people involved that were really more responsible than anything else,
Mm-hmm. And that's why he started looking at the council like, look, I mean, I'm starting to see that the council isn't as pure, as clean cut as I thought they were.
Yeah, and the fact that Obi-Wan was basically siding with them, it's like, well, okay, then you're just as bad as everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Anakin did still technically give him a chance to stand with him. Because at that point, he thought that Palpatine and everything represented the Republic. That's what I thought was kind of funny about the whole thing, is that at that point, Anakin wasn't even really thinking in terms of, I'm evil, I'm a dark side guy, and all this other stuff. He thought that he was stamping out some sort of rebellion from these loose cannon Jedi Knights and Masters. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think that Lucas's storytelling ends up being pretty brilliant.
And I mean, if you really look at it from the Clone Wars perspective, I mean, you had like General, was it Cruel? the guy with the four arms, and
Oh yeah.
he was like basically like an agent of Sidious.
Yep.
You know, he was getting the Clone Wars. I mean, the Clone Troopers killed left and right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then he kept sending them out there to basically to their deaths or whatever. But that was after Anakin and all them had left, and so it was like, wow, we found out that this guy is, and he was kind of saying like, no, there's a higher power than this, and you guys are too stupid to see it, and so I mean, that was just kind of like one of those things where stuff was always kind of going in the background with the Jedi, and that's what caused Anakin really to like really lose his way.
Yeah, absolutely. But
All
I think we could definitely agree then that Anakin was probably the better overall teacher for, like everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, well, that's not too bad of a duel of the fates, right?
I know.
All right.
Today.
Well, you ready to go to the Cantina?
Yeah, man.
All
Got
right.
some stuff to talk about.
Cool, let's do it. All right. So what do we got first? We got some Mandalorian news, I see. Some really exciting stuff, actually. Like, we finally have a release date.
Yeah, so it's pretty much been confirmed that Mandalorian Season 2 will air October 7th on Disney+.
So that's a little bit earlier than what we had thought before then.
Yeah. And I'm actually, like I said, I'm really happy about it because, of course, the sooner we can get back into some Mandalorian, the better for me. But yeah, man, it's been really cool.
Yeah, you know what?
I can't wait for it.
The thing that's terrible is, I recently got Comcast Internet, or Xfinity. And it's actually part of the reason why I'm actually able to host the show even from the house, because, it's pretty fast and everything. But I ended up subscribing to their Flex device, which is essentially kind of like their Fire Stick or Roku or something.
Okay.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I think it's so much better than all the other ones, and I'm pretty much a Fire Stick, Fire TV guy. But I have to say I love the Comcast Flex. But what I really, really hate is the fact that they don't carry Disney Plus on it. So when The Mandalorian returns or any, or if I just want to watch Disney Plus or whatever, I always have to switch back to the Fire Stick to check it out. This is cool. I got this whole like Blair Witch thing going here.
I know.
It's kind of interesting.
Well, you always said you wanted a Star Wars horror movie, so there you go.
Oh, it just kills me about the fact that all my light kits are somewhere else right now.
I know.
Because, I mean, the funny thing is, I have got more than enough lights to completely light myself. But all I have left, because they're either on jobs or they're, in other locations, all I got left, unfortunately, is this one little battery-operated light that I really hope lasts for the rest of this show.
Maybe some of the fireflies around you help you out.
Yes, they're acting as backlights. It's wonderful. Along with all the mosquitoes that are eating me right now. Outdoors is a really interesting experience. Although I have to say that I actually kind of like it, though. I like it. I like being out here and doing this stuff. I mean, I'd much rather be doing this from the beach. I think that would be kind of cool. I'm going to have to look into that. I'm going to have to do like more on-location stuff like this because it really doesn't take that much stuff. But with The Mandalorian, though, I'm glad that it's coming out early because, first of all, I was afraid that because of COVID and all that, they were going to push that. Because how they pushed Top Gun back another year now. It's like in next July now. And even though movie theaters are actually set to reopen this coming week, it's just so weird about how they're deciding, what they're going to do. Like, they pushed the High Republic books, for instance, to January, right? Yeah. I mean, what's up with that, And so I was really afraid that The Mandalorian was going to be okay.
Fortunately, that was actually completed before COVID even hit.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because
right.
But the High Republic books were too, though. Remember, they were supposed to come out in June. At least the first one was, and
I think they had to give the fans something, especially as popular as The Mandalorian, and as I think we're under attack.
I know, right? Fries are done. Oh yeah, man. I mean, when we're doing these shows outside of the studio, it's it's adventure. I'm just glad that Skype and everything is pretty much behaving. We haven't had any stream interruptions. It's pretty cool. And plus, you heard the guy that was like running some sort of a I don't know if it was a leaf blower or some motorized thing in the background earlier. I'm like, it's 8:30, dude. What are you doing? Everybody's supposed to be relatively inside by now.
I know, right? But yeah, we don't know. I mean, as far as Mandalorian, I'm just glad that it's coming out. It'll be here October 7th. I'm just wondering, like, okay, when are we going to start getting, like, scenes or trailers and stuff from it?
Exactly. Because last week we did the whole Mandalorian trailer thing, and again, we thought that it was going to be released the prior Tuesday, like August 4th or something, and then we came to find out that didn't happen, and then we thought, okay, well, maybe it'll come, a little bit later or whatever. We still don't have it yet. Ronaldo says, maybe it's just me, but it seems strange that there has been no marketing for the second season. And exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what we're saying, is the fact that it's like, you would think that there would be something, a teaser trailer.
Yeah.
I think we got a little bit of a poster or something like that, though.
Yeah, poster.
We did get a poster that seemed to show like what Ahsoka looks like now or whatever, but I'm and I think you brought this up last week. I really hope it's not another Solo situation.
Yeah.
About the only thing that I can say is at least we know. I mean, we basically, it's not like the first season where we had no idea, but I still think that we do definitely need to see something from this season.
Definitely.
When do you think they're going to release a trailer finally?
I'm guessing, like I said, if they're talking about the NBA playoffs, that would make sense. So that's right around the corner. That's coming up this next week.
Next week.
So next week
Ronaldo says, Eric, you are literally in the dark side.
Actually, he's still fighting onto the light. He's
That's
like
right.
right now.
That's right. Well, when the light rises, the darkness rises to meet it. So I'm just glad that there hasn't been any nosy neighbors or people coming out, trying to see, like, what is he doing out there? Because somebody,
I think the news is. They probably think the newscast is like taking place in your backyard,
right? Or like, I'm sure there's people that are in their upstairs, rooms or whatever. They're peeking out the window, like, what's this guy doing in his driveway? But hey, just be happy you could see me at all, because
I know, right?
If this light goes out,
yeah, you'll be fully submerged in that darkness.
Yeah, we're gonna be in a lot of trouble. All right, what do we got next?
Next, we have information on Cassian Andor.
Yeah, now this is kind of nice because this is one of those series that we knew was coming out, and we knew everything was going to be pretty much rolling along, and it was going to be released. In other words, it wasn't basically something that had, okay, we're going to write a script and we're going to look at it. I mean, it's definitely going into production. But unlike Obi Wan, they had never really attached anybody to it. I mean, we knew that Diego Luna was going to be in it. We knew that. Who's the guy that plays K2SO?
Alan Tudyk.
Alan Tudyk. So we knew he was going to be in it. They did announce another cast member, I think, didn't they?
Well, no, we know Genevieve O'Reilly is going to be Mon Mothma again.
Right.
And Stellan Skarsgård and Kyle Solar are going to have some mystery roles.
Yeah.
So we don't really know what those are going to be.
Right. So they're starting to put this whole thing together now, which I think is just supremely cool. That we're finally getting a little bit, because again, the Cassian Andor series, we kind of knew a little bit about what it was going to be about, but we didn't really know a whole lot about when it takes place and everything. So it's good to see that we're starting to get some news about this, because the other good news about that is that it actually shows that, hey, this thing may be coming out sooner than later.
Well, they actually are Diego Luna, who plays, of course, Cassian Andor, is okay with the Rogue One prequel show delay because of the corona pandemic, of course.
Of course.
But he kind of revealed to an interviewer for The Guardian that the coronavirus has changed his priorities. He's expressed his excitement about starting to film the Cassian Andor prequel earlier this year before the pandemic forced most of the major film and television productions to be completely shut down. But now he believes that the filming shouldn't be rushed. Amen to that. So um, he says shooting is starting around the world, and slowly we're getting back, but there's no rush. To me, what this pandemic brought to my attention is that there are priorities. We have to be cautious and we have to be wise on when and how we go back.
Yeah, and I mean, that's fine. And I don't think anybody would really fault him for saying that. Or, I mean, sure, we all want content. And I mean, one of the problems with the whole production shutdown is there's just been somewhat of a lack of content, but thank goodness that there was enough that's been produced that Netflix and Prime and everything have been releasing a lot of original movies lately. So there's always some new series, always something that happens, but eventually that'll go away. But at the same time, I think people realize that, look, we have to be responsible about this. You know, we can't just rush into it and endanger everybody. I mean, there's already been a couple of actors. One of my, well, I can't say he was like one of my total favorite actors, but an actor that I really love by the name of Mark Blum, who was in Desperately Seeking Susan, and he had been in some other stuff. He was in Law & Order. He pops up occasionally in movies. You know, he died of COVID back in March, like around when this first was happening. Well, you know, here's a guy that was otherwise healthy. Had that never happened, he would probably still be with us today. And so, you know, we've seen other actors and stuff like that, and some people succumb to this, and, you know, that's sad, of course. But what's really sad is the fact that you would really hate for these guys to actually needlessly pass. Like some of your favorite actors just needlessly die because, you know, they rushed everything in. Let me pick up this comment from Ronaldo here. The new cast member for the Cassian show is Adria Arjona. I think she is playing, or maybe it's Arjona. I think she's playing Cassian's sister. Now, that would be interesting if they actually bring in some family members of Cassian. I would actually like to see that because his story is really cool because he used to be a separatist.
Yeah, and they kind of covered that even in the Clone Wars with that one particular kid who kind of had a crush on Ahsoka.
Right. And that's what I think is really cool is the fact that the whole idea of somebody who used to be a separatist, who would be considered an enemy of the Republic, now is suddenly like a you know, pretty much a hero or agent of the rebellion.
Yep.
And it's really interesting because a lot of people forget about the whole separatist angle. It becomes like everybody versus the Empire. And because the Republic morphed into the Empire, suddenly now the separatists aren't so bad. You know, and they were basically used as tools of Palpatine as well. So I think that there's a lot of potential in this series. I think that we could actually see some really, really good story arcs in this. I think we could see a lot of new material that can sneak its way into canon. I think they can expand a lot of stories that, you know, we've already seen and maybe from a different angle or perspective. So I think that this is shaping up to be a really good series.
Oh, indeed. I can't wait for that to come out. Of course, I'm not rushing it, but when it does come out, we'll definitely be ready for it.
Absolutely. And look, we got The Mandalorian until then. We've got, you know, there's a lot of other stuff that's coming out. And sure, they pushed ahead all the Star Wars movies for a year, but maybe that's not a bad thing. You know, maybe it's good that they've done this. Maybe they could spend some time, you know, plan, do some things like that. All right, what do we got next?
All right, next. Will Ahsoka, that's right, Ahsoka Tano in The Mandalorian. She is making her return. Question is, will she have her white lightsabers? And why are they white in the first place?
Her white sabers.
White sabers. Yes.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing now, I'm trying to remember. Anakin.
Because when she started off, they were green.
Right.
Then they switched to blue.
Right. Which are the ones that Anakin gave her in season 7?
The blue ones.
Okay.
Because the green ones, they have like a meaning for it. So the colors actually have
right. In fact,
meaning.
Me and one of my friends were actually going through it because he was having a little bit of an issue that Rey's lightsaber was yellow because that was more like the Sentinels, and the Sentinels were the only things that, even Palpatine feared and everything like that. And I kind of explained to him that, her role kind of matched that of a Sentinel, so it was okay. Honestly, I don't know if... Well, I do know the co-writer of The Rise of Skywalker was very much into the whole canon thing, so he probably did that on purpose. But who knows? But the thing is, with the white lightsabers, which that was in Rebels, right?
Yeah.
And that's when we first saw them?
Yep.
Well,
So, go ahead.
I would venture to say then, yeah, we're going to see white lightsabers. What's the problem? I mean,
well, you just gotta hope they just, keep track of that.
I think they will, because don't forget, Filoni was the one that wrote the whole Rebels thing, and he's one of the main guys on The Mandalorian. So I think that's... And you know how protective he is of Ahsoka.
That's true.
He is totally protective of that character. I mean, he will not... He's really, really protective of the Ahsoka character. And I think that everything is going to be carefully cultivated moving forward as far as... what's done with her, what she has and all this stuff. So I don't really think that that's a problem. Now, did she have them in the Season 7 of Clone Wars? Or were they... That was Anakin that gave her the blue ones, and I know that. But, I mean, she didn't lose them, and they didn't actually cover the white lightsabers in there, did they?
Well, let me just go back first. So, Ahsoka started off with the green sabers, which usually denotes inner harmony and compassion. As she developed as a duelist, Ahsoka built her second lightsaber with a short Shoto-style blade. That too was green. Then when she left the Jedi Order, she wields blue blades, which signify strength of character and inner resolve.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a book told by E.K. Johnson's Ahsoka, so the Ahsoka novel.
Right. I still want to read that one.
And... some people say it still should be rested. Some people still say that it can be considered canon.
It's totally canon. It was written during the canon time period.
So, according to the novel, Ahsoka was one of the many Jedi associates who went underground after Order 66. A naturally righteous and courageous individual, Ahsoka realized that she was unable to stand by and watch the Empire cause suffering on the galactic scale. But every time she steps outside of the shadow, she found herself hunted down by Darth Vader's Inquisitors. She defeated one of the Inquisitors in battle and took the crystals from his lightsaber, which had been corrupted by the dark side, a process that the Sith referred to as bleeding a kyber crystal.
Right, which is when they're usually red.
Right. That's where you get the crimson colors from.
Mm-hmm.
So Ahsoka was able to use her own connection to the light side of the Force to realign the kyber crystals to heal them from the dark side influence. In doing so, she created the unique and distinctive white crystals.
Interesting. Well, I would venture to say that they're going to keep it that way for continuity's sake, and also because you got to remember that Rebels was happening just before Episode 4, and we're only 5 years after. I mean, granted, I guess she could have lost them and could have gotten some new ones.
Mm-hmm.
You know what actually has some really interesting canon material? I'm just marveling at the fact that I totally am so mood lighting here, and like I'm in some sort of like a film noir or whatever. But anyway, This is great, man. I'm actually kind of liking this. Actually, I mean, it might be sad, but the thing that I think is really fascinating about all of this is if you go back and you look at, how everything's progressed,
mm-hmm.
and we see how Ahsoka's character in particular has progressed, and we see how she is in Rebels, I think it stands to reason that even though anything could have happened between Episode 4 and 6 with her, I don't see any reason. And what I started to bring up was one of the really cool canon things that a lot of people have overlooked, but apparently has some really cool things in it, is the Jedi Fallen Order game.
Mm.
And so if you go and you just go online, there's, I guess, all the cutscenes and all that stuff from it, where you don't necessarily have to play the game. You can read about it. At this point, you can find out all you need to know canon-wise. really cool stuff that fills in a little bit of the blanks, and we're getting a little bit in Mandalorian. So I think that she's going to have the white lightsabers. That's
Well, that'd be cool. Like I said, it'd be cool to actually see those like in live, and
oh yeah, just like seeing the
especially
dark
clashing
saber
against the dark saber. Yeah, I was about to say, especially
right.
clashing against the dark saber. Yeah, that'd be sweet.
I think we're in for a really cool season 2, honestly.
Definitely.
And I think that the more that we find out about it, the better it's gonna get. All right, you ready to move on to my favorite segment now?
Yeah, man, let's do it, man.
All right, it's a little segment that we call Clear Your Mind. That's right. This is where we answer your questions that you guys submit to us. So who submitted the first question?
The first question comes from Glenn Yusuf. His question is, why do you think the council didn't give Anakin the rank of master?
That's a good question, actually, because I think a lot of it was because of his anger, and they saw that he was a little bit dangerous. Because remember, the council didn't even really want to make him a Jedi at all. It was Qui-Gon that was pushing the point a little bit, and then Obi Wan stepped up and said, well, if you guys are going to train him, I'll do it. And they finally were just like, fine, whatever. But they were always a little bit uneasy about the way Anakin was anyway. And I think that they felt that he would take it on as too much of like an arrogance type of a thing, and that there were certain things about him, even though if you actually watch the Clone Wars, I honestly think they should have granted him the rank of master. I think that would have fixed a lot of problems, honestly.
True.
I think a lot of it was a political move.
Mm-hmm. I think they still wanted to keep reins on him. I think they kind of wanted to still have control, because it's like if he's not seen, because now you put him amongst the rest of the craft, if you will, because now you're basically saying, okay, well, you're up there with Mace and Ki-Adi-Mundi and Plo Koon, like you're just as qualified as these guys, and it's like, but you don't. I mean, I can't necessarily say that, because you have tons of different masters who weren't on the council, but that was Anakin's dream to kind of be on the council.
Yeah, I think. Again, I understand the reasons behind why they did it, and I don't 100% disagree with them, but I do think that it would have. I think it created more problems than it solved by keeping him off the council. I think that he probably should have been on the council, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, who's next?
All right, the next question, it comes from Julie Consway. Her question is, did Obi-Wan know ahead of time that he was going to sacrifice himself when they arrived on the Death Star?
I think so. He definitely knew he was going to sacrifice himself once they were on there, because he knew that he was going to face Vader, and I think that was part of his plan. But honestly, I think that a lot of that was factoring into his plan anyway, because remember, he trained with Qui-Gon about how to become a Force ghost. And he knew, and again, we're finding all this stuff out because the story is being revealed to us, but he actually knew, as a Jedi who was trained in this particular skill, how powerful he would be and how much more of a help he would be. Let me just get Ronaldo's comment up in here. Every time I see the council denying Anakin the rank of master, I want him to say, come on, I had a Padawan, right? Exactly. It's kind of like, dude, you pretty much, like, here's the thing, just to go back on that for a second. Here's the thing I don't understand about this whole keeping him off the council thing. They give him a Padawan, which is way more of a responsibility. Like, you're shaping a person. Now, granted, Yoda did that because Anakin having to teach, in a way, was teaching him.
Right.
And it was a way of calming him down and making him a little bit more responsible and less reckless. That part I get. Totally understand. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, being a master, if he's around those guys all the time and they could constantly be feeding him. Instead, they're sending him off on all these adventures, which, yeah, he was really effective at it, but in a lot of ways, it was reinforcing a lot of Anakin's beliefs. It wasn't really teaching him calmness when he's out there, taking on all these clone troopers. Now, granted, they needed him probably more and that's another point, too, by the way. I think they needed him more in the field than they did in the council. But then again, if you're a Jedi Master, you could still be out there fighting. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I think to Ronaldo's point, having a Padawan definitely calmed him down a lot, but it also created other issues for him.
Sure.
And the other issues was the fact that he formed, once again, that strengthened his one major weakness, which is attachments.
Absolutely.
He had an attachment to Ahsoka. So much that he will be willing to jeopardize certain missions just to go back for her.
This guy's a lot. He's like,
and Plo Koon had to tell him a lot of times. He was like, "You have to trust that you trained your Padawan correctly, and let her go, and let her." And Yoda told him the same thing. Like, okay, well, what about her? I can't just leave her. And he's just like, look. At some point, he's like that parent that won't let his children leave the house.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what they were trying to do. Like, you can't hold on to him for so long. You have to let go.
He's very much like an addicted personality. He's got almost like an alcoholic. And they keep feeding him beer. It's like, this guy has a little problem with attachments. They knew that because of his mother.
Mm-hmm.
And then, certain people kind of figured out the Padme thing. Sometimes they didn't really know how far it went, but they knew there was something.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, now give him a Padawan. It's like, here, have another attachment. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But
let alone, it's not even, not to be like a sexist or anything, but it's like it's a girl Padawan at that. It's not even like another guy where you can feel, you're going to be more protective over the female species anyway. As a man, you're going to be naturally more protective over that.
And all you SJWs can leave your comments in the comment section below if you're watching the rebroadcast. Way to get views, buddy. Yeah, but you're right, though. That's basically the way that, especially with him, because he's very chivalrous. He's definitely going to be looking out for a female Padawan more so than a male Padawan.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows? But getting back to our clear your mind question, though, that Julie was asking, yes, I definitely think that Obi-Wan's master plan did involve his death and becoming a Force ghost, probably at the hands of Vader. I'm just not sure how much he modified that plan as time went on. You know what I mean? It's because of the circumstances. Did he actually know those circumstances?
I think he knew he was going to have to face Vader. He knew that.
Right, but at that point, though,
I don't think he knew that he was going to have to sacrifice himself. I think that's what I think he kind of made that decision
during the duel.
Yeah, when he looked over and he was just like, okay, like I know I'm not as spry as I used to be. So Vader is definitely more powerful right now. I have to, now we got these, like, what's more important? Me beating Vader or them getting out of here and them being the hope for what we need? And I think that's where he looked at things. And that's the leadership side of Obi-Wan coming to play, is that like, okay, what is the greater good? Me beating Vader? Maybe. And then, and still dying, but then you still have the Emperor out there. So it's not like everything would have went away just because you beat Vader. You still have to contend with Palpatine. So I think the best thing would have been for like, okay, you know what? I have this ace in the hole standing right across the way in Luke Skywalker. Vader doesn't even know he exists. I have the high ground once again.
Well,
I think it's better off that I just take this L in a way, and then I can still, like you said, I'm still more powerful because now I'm not limited by time, space, my body limitations. I'm omnipotent. I can be anywhere.
Well, that's just it. Not only does he figure all that, but he probably realizes that if he's around, Luke is always going to rely on him. where I think he wants Luke to grow and to begin to
He had
come
to grow
into his
quickly.
own. Yeah, exactly. And, he was able to guide him. He guided her to the Death Star. I mean, even though the Jedi do seem to take these really weird chances. I mean, just the way that they were doing this whole thing with Luke and Leia and how they were going to train. I mean, they were very cavalier about it, if you think about it, with the whole universe in the balance, basically. But even if you look at his whole, like, Death Star trench run, and Obi-Wan's like, no, man, use the Force. Just trust in the Force or whatever. It's like, okay, you haven't really
learned like 2 minutes ago.
Yeah.
I just learned how to fly like a little probe. Now you want me to use it to guide a whole missile into this thing?
Right. I'm thinking maybe keep that targeting computer on.
Well, that's why I can understand those guys back at the base. Like, hey, you turned off your target computer. What's wrong? It's like, nothing. Am I right? Well, why'd you turn it off?
Which brings me to another point. It's like, they're like, well, no, I'm okay. And they're just like, oh, well, all right. It's like, really? Nobody was on the other
last 3 ships left.
Yeah, well, he was the last ship at that point.
Yeah.
And it's like, there was nobody on the other end of that conversation like, really? No, what are you doing? Turn it back on. And freaking out because they were about to be annihilated by the Death Star if he missed. And they saw all these other more experienced pilots, make that same run with their targeting computers and missed. And here comes this farm boy, for all they know, and he decides, I'm just going to switch off the targeting computer. And everybody's like, oh, well, okay. I mean, as long as everything's okay.
Maybe they just didn't want to freak him out or something. Like, he's got something. I hope he's got. But then my thing is with Luke, that would freak me out because he seemed really, really calm when like Obi-Wan started talking. That would freak me out.
Oh, yeah. Because the other part of me would be like, when else were you around? How often?
When I went to the refresher, you weren't
right.
there. Were you?
It's like, how much are you, like, what are the parameters of this? And is this audio or is there a video feed to this as well?
Can I shut you guys off? Like, I'll go to the bathroom or.
But you got to give Obi-Wan credit though. He eased him into it, right? He was just audio there in The New Hope, and then he appears to him where you add the video feed and.
Yeah.
And of course, Luke at the time thinks he's delirious.
Exactly.
Got to ease people into that.
Exactly.
All right, but I think that's going to wrap up our show this week. Of course, Ronaldo, it was good to talk to you. It's good to, glad that everybody was able to tune in and watch us on a Friday night. We hope that you guys will come back next Friday and see us again. Maybe we'll even be back in the studio. All right. So that's going to do it for this week. Next week, of course, we're going to have a lot more Star Wars news. There's something, even though we had this whole pandemic and everything, there's always something that seems to be happening with Star Wars. So remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment below if you're watching this rebroadcast because we'd love to keep the discussion going there as well. So that's going to do it for us this week. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.